All right, today we're going to be talking about loops in JavaScript. There's a whole bunch of ways of doing it, and we're going to go over a lot of them. But we're not necessarily, you don't have to be a wizard at any of these. You just got to know that they exist. Out of breath because my students challenge me to better myself by doing push-ups in the beginning of classes, which I'm very grateful for. The stuttering gets worse when I'm tired. All right, so we're going to create just an array and an object and show you all how you can iterate through them. First, let's just make an array and do the simplest type of array. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We're going to call this my array. Bam. All right. Who knows of a way we can iterate through this array? Actually, I want everybody to think for 20 seconds. And after 20 seconds, I want you to tell me all of the different ways you can loop through this array. Starting now. It's perfect for me because I get to catch my breath. Ten, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. All right. Jack, what's one way I can iterate through an array?
For each.
For each. Cool. Wow, I thought I was typing there. I wasn't. For each. Cool. Love it. Rodney, what's another way I could iterate through an array?
I'm having a blank moment.
What's a loop in JavaScript look like? What kind of
It's
loop?
like a way to iterate, isn't it?
Yep. What different loops do you have in JavaScript?
Oh, while loops.
While loops. Cool. What else we got, Will?
Could I just use the word like iterables? Like map, reduce, so on. Could we just clump that under iterables?
Cool. So we'll say map,
Right.
etc. Awesome. Tiffany, what do you think?
Other than the ones that we've already listed?
Yep, there's totally quite a few more. Well, there's one big one that I'm surprised nobody said yet.
Can we do
a big one?
like the find? Sorry, not find, times, like 25 times and then this block code.
That's a Ruby thing, I think. I don't think that's JavaScript.
Do you for loops? Or is that a while loop?
Yes.
For loop.
I was waiting for that one. Oh my gosh. And then it turns out we actually have a few different types of for loops. Thank you, Eric. We have a few different types of for loops. We have for blank of blank. We have the base type, which is like for, like let I equal 0, or I is less than something, and then I plus plus. That's another type we can do. What else can we do? There's one more in here. Actually, I don't expect y'all to know it, actually. It's for blank in blank. So these, I think, and there's one that we missed called a while do loop. Do while loop, actually.
There's also, wait, I feel like I've seen break.
Break, yeah, so that's part of a while loop. So let's talk about that for a second. Let's start with the first one, the for each. This one we're pretty familiar with. I bet there's some stuff that you can do in it that you didn't realize. So in general, let's say I want to just console.log each term here. Well, what are my two major arguments here? My two major arguments are my callback function. Sorry, my one major argument is a callback function, right? So I have a callback, and this is the block of code that I run for every element in that array. And then this callback function has two arguments, although you wouldn't write them here, but it does have two arguments. The callback function has, first argument is the element that you're iterating over, and the second element is the index. Now, I bet you haven't used the index yet. We're just going to go ahead and fuck around with it for a second. So let's say we want to do myArray.forEach. Okay, so remember there's a callback. So I'm going to make an anonymous function here. So already here's my anonymous function. All of this equals a function. And the input arguments to this function, I'm going to do the element that I'm on. And the second one, which you might not have used before, is called an index. Let's just go ahead and console.log both of them. So I'm going to do console.log. I'm going to say element. And then give it a space there. And we're just going to say comma element. And we'll do another one here, except for instead we're going to do it with index. So whoops, index. And let's see what we get. Hey, look at that. I iterated through it. And look, element 1 is the first element that pops up. Element 2 is the second one, and so on and so forth. But the index is the index in the array that it is. So you might find a situation where this is useful. So this is one way. This is the for each. This is going to be our for each method. And this one has an index. Cool. Who knows how to write a while loop? Who wants to start me off? Let's do a while loop. Nobody?
Start off with the.
I'll start. Okay.
Go ahead.
We'll do. I guess you could do like let number equal 0.
Okay.
And then, while number is greater than 3 or less than 3. We can increment by 1. Is it in JavaScript? Is it plus plus? So number plus plus.
How do I syntactically write this while loop though?
So while in parentheses and then curly braces after that, and then in or number, and then plus plus colon semicolon.
Yeah. So a while loop basically has two parts to it, and the rest is pretty simple. So one of them is if this condition is true, it runs this block of code. That's all a while loop is. You can break out of it by providing a break keyword. So let's say while number is less than 5, but we could also say if number equals 3, we'll break it or something like that. If number is equal to 3, we'll say we'll break out of the while loop. And that's where we would type in break. So let's just console.log number after all of that. And I want everybody to, on their hand, show me what number it will be, since it's a number 1 through 5. What number will number be when I console.log number? I see a 2. I see a 3. I see a 3. I see a pensive 2, like wondering if it still is 2. Cool. I think it's going to be 3. It is 3. Let's talk about why. So the number is going to equal 0. Awesome. The number equals 0. And then what does it do? It says if the number equals 3, then break. The number doesn't equal 3, so it never hits this break. Number plus plus. Number equals 1. Goes all the way back here. Number plus plus. Number equals 2. Check. Does 2 equal 3? No. So number plus plus. Now number equals 3. So now when it runs through this again, it's hitting this if statement. And when it hits this, it's saying, is the number 3? Yes. Let me break out of it. So when it breaks out, now the number has been updated to 3. So when we console.log number, it's 3. Does anybody have any questions about that?
I don't think I ever went over this, but the 3 equals signs.
Great question.
What's up with
I am just going to show you really quick. It's type checking. I'm going to show you in a terminal. It's the easiest way, I think. I'm going to go to this terminal. We're back to the pink terminal now. I'm going to make it fucking huge. I'm going to type in node, and I am going to say, so now we're in JavaScript code, right? This is like your IRB, but for JavaScript, because I typed in node. Node is the JavaScript runtime on your computer. Cool. So I'm going to type in 1 equals 1. See how that's false? And it's false because a string is not a number. Does everybody understand that? Great. I'm going to take away this equal sign. Now look at what it equals. So 2 equal signs is a weak typing check. 3 equal signs is a strong typing check. Does anybody have any questions about that?
So why would you use
So-
that in case of a break? Oh, sorry.
No, you're good. Go ahead.
No, that was my question. Why? How does that factor into the case of the break? Like, why would you need 3 for the break?
Are you asking me why I used 3 and not 2?
Yes.
This whole thing would work the same with 2. Should still be the same thing. Oh, whoops, I just didn't console.log number down here. Oh, whoops. Jeez, Louise. So it still works the same. I will say it's better practice to use 3 almost always. There's really not many it's not very often that you can really validate using 2. The reason for that is that you want your app to be robust. You want to make sure that you're type checking as much as possible, because if something is going to break because the equal signs are messed up, you want it to break in development before you actually deploy your shit, and then maybe someone can send a different type of code to your computer or something like that. Point is that you want to make sure that you are being as thorough as possible, even if it seems counterintuitive, because you might be saying to yourself, but I actually want to, I want my function to be more flexible, right? But actually a big concept of functional programming is you want a function to do a specific thing. So if I'm writing a function, I want to make sure that I know what kind of inputs are being put in there. And we use 3 equal signs to basically say, oh, okay, if the thing was supposed to be a string, is it a string? Because it fucking should be a string. If the thing was supposed to be a number and it's not a number, you shouldn't be using that function anyways. Does that clear things up? Cool. And I gotta check something real quick. Cool. Let's see. All right, so next up, we've got a do while loop. And again, I don't want y'all to stress too much about how do I get good at these right now, because the truth is that I think the best thing you could get out of this lesson is one of 2 things: how to do one of these really well, and also how to recognize what the other things are when you see them. Because everybody sort of has their own way of coding, and JavaScript has a whole bunch of different ways you could do the same thing, and that's just the way that it is. So it's really more important that you can dive into somebody else's code and understand what's going on than being able to do all these comfortably yourself. But if you have a rough idea of what they're doing, it's not that hard to follow usually. Next, we're going to do a do while loop, which I actually forgot how to do a do while loop. So I'm just looking up the syntax. I don't think it's anything crazy. Yep. So a do while loop is almost the same exact thing as a while loop. You're going to say do this block and then put the while after. So let's do the same exact example. We're going to say while, oh, whoops. I don't know, number is greater than, I'm going to say while number is, we're going to initialize the number at 0. And then we are going to run through this block while number does not equal 0. Actually, we're going to say while number is greater than 0. Yeah, that's what I'm going to do. Number is greater than 0. Okay, so here's my question. And here's the only thing you really need to know about do while loops. I've never seen a do while loop in somebody else's code. Okay. The first iteration, will this number meet the condition in the while loop? Will. Is 0 greater than 0?
No.
0 is not greater than 0. I agree. 0 is indeed not greater than 0. So that means that this does not meet this condition. In a do while loop, let's just say number equals, I'm going to do a side effect. I'm going to say like maybe a toggle or something like that. Let toggle equals false. And then I'm going to say toggle equals true here. It always runs the first time in a do while loop, even if it doesn't meet the conditions. So it always runs at least once. So let's check, let's console.log our toggle just to see if that ran. And it did. We switched it from false to true, even though it did not meet this condition. Now, let's say I were to flip this and just make it a while loop. All right. In this case, we still get false because now that check, that conditional runs before the block of code. So that means that it's going to prevent it from ever hitting this code if it's going to prevent it from ever hitting this code if it doesn't meet the condition. So I'm going to ask Paige, regurgitate to me the difference between a while loop and a while do loop, a do while loop.
A do while loop will always run once, even if the while condition is not met, but a while loop won't.
Yep, exactly. And Jack,
Like it won't run until.
how do I escape a while loop? Or any loop, I think you can escape.
What did you say? How do you escape?
How do I? Yeah.
Like while you're in the loop?
Yep.
Break.
Yep. Cool. So if you trigger a break while you're in the loop, it stops that iteration. Awesome.
But finishes the one you're on.
Yep. All right, cool. We got while loops. We got do while loops covered. Awesome. Now we get the big boy. Well, I don't know why I'm calling it the big boy. It's just another one. We got for loops. In your words, Junior, explain to me what a for loop is.
I guess the for loop is a way to iterate through whatever data you're looking at based off of a certain criteria.
Sure. I'll deal with that. I like that. Let's go for the base one. How do I do, let's say I want to iterate through, I'm going to copy this down. I'm just going to move it down. How am I going to iterate through this array using a for loop?
The for loop has to have a condition. Dang, I just had it.
So we're going to have a condition. We're going to have what else?
Is it a statement?
We have a condition. We have, I think that statement really is, I guess, yeah, I would call the let something equal something. So we'll do I equals 0 or something. And then what?
Then you need your conditional statement. So if I is greater than, equal to, or less than something.
So yeah, so the second thing would be our condition. So it would be, yeah, if I is less than, I don't know, 10. In this case, actually, we probably want to do, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So if I is less than 5, or 4 actually. Oh no, we do less than 5, because by the time I equals 5, it won't run through. Awesome. Okay, and then what goes here? There's a third argument here.
You need the increment.
Increment. So you could do I plus plus. If you wanted to, you could also do I think you could do I plus equals, 5 or something like that. And then we'll just console.log I real quick. Just know that it doesn't have to go up by 1 every time. Oh, I got to get rid of this toggle. What? I equals 0, I is less than, I is less than 20 or something. So now it actually went up by 5 each time. It doesn't have to go up by 1. Just a fun fact there. But we want it to go up by 1 because it's just, it's more convenient in this case. I've had coding problems where it's better to go by 2. Let's not worry about that for now though, right? But cool. So how do I get each term of my array now? Rodney.
How do you get each?
Let's say I want to console.log each term of my array. How do I do that?
You would console.log I, wouldn't you?
Will that give me the term of my array, or will that give me what I equals?
I don't know if I'm fully understanding what you're asking.
Okay, so if I console.log I, we're creating this variable I and we're incrementing it, right? So if I just do a console.log I here, this has nothing to do with my array. Maybe my array, instead of having numbers here, maybe it has strings. Let's say Rodney, Tiffany, John, Jack, Joe Mama. Cool. How am I going to get this to console.log Rodney, Tiffany, John, Jack, and then Joe Mama?
Oh, you would console.log my array.
Beautiful. My array, just my array. I want to do this iteratively, right? So I would actually, the goal that what I'm trying to explain is that you can index this array at a certain point by using I, but you have to index my array of I. So now I went in console.log all of them. So this is a basic for loop way of iterating, but what if I told you that there's an even easier way to iterate through an array with a for loop that you might see? So this way is very, I would call it numerical and mathematic. You have to index this via a number. You're saying, let me index this array at a certain number. There's actually an easier way of doing that. You could also do we could say name in my array, or is it of? I can't remember. I get the two mixed up. Let's see. Console.log name, and I actually need to have a const here. Cool, let's see. Awesome. That is not what I wanted. I want of. Cool. So if I look here, now I've gone through and I've pulled out each name. Awesome. That seemed kind of trippy to people. So now if for example, this is very similar to a dot for each. This is almost exactly the same, right? Like if I say my array dot for each, open it up, bam, bam, bam. If I said name inside of this block, being inside of this block from here to here, sorry, from here to here is exactly the same as being inside of this block. Does anybody have any questions about that? Cool. Lastly, you can iterate through you can loop through you can also loop through a hash, I'm sorry, an object in JavaScript as well. So now let's make an object. Let's say const my object equals, I don't know, we'll say name, it's going to be John, age is going to be 27, pets is going to be an array, Maddie, Doomslayer, fuck. And Doogie, cool. And then maybe what else? Occupation. I'm gonna teach you. Great. So now we have this object. I can also iterate through each term of this object. So I could say for key in my obj. And now I'm going to say I could just console.log the key. And now look at that. I have name, age, pets, occupation. And if I want to get the value, I could say like const value equals my obj indexed at key. And then now I could console.log the value too. Or maybe I could just put that here, key, and then we'll do this string, space, and then value. Oh, cool, and look at that. Now I've went through, iterated, and got all of those values. All right, so this has been a lot of watching. I'm gonna try something different today. And rather than me give you an assignment, I'm gonna ask y'all to go in groups. I'm gonna put you in groups of 2, and you're just gonna dick around in a REPL together and see what you could do. So literally what I want you to do is just go in and try each of these. So let's talk about all of them. Let me get that list up. I know y'all can't see. We're gonna say for each, dot for each. We're gonna have a for loops, and then that's gonna be for in loops, for of loops. Cool. We're gonna do a while loop and a do while loop. And I'm not gonna talk about map or filter because I feel like that's a totally different lesson. I will say I don't use anything but for each all that often. I pretty much mainly use for each. There are totally use cases for using the other ones. I personally don't though. Sweet. I am going to stick the armchair coaches. What does that mean? Kung Fu Panda. I want to eat dumplings. All right. Your assignments are going to be to make one of each of these and iterate through something and make your own assignment to figure out how these things work. Maybe instead of me telling you what to do, I want you to just try playing around. And I'll hop in the rooms to be a little bit of a guide, but this is a really good way of learning stuff. So I am going to 9 participants into 2 rooms. Nope. Oh, one group is, I think, going to have 3. All right. Be free. Let's go into Aloha.
Hello, hello.
What assignment have y'all created for yourself? Oh, love it.
Loop through the array.
Love it.
We just got started here. So for each element, you can have an index too.
TBH, I thought this lesson was going to be like how to do, not like what the arrays were, but like how to do like crazy like nested array type things. Like
Unfortunately, so this has actually been a total issue before in the past, and honestly, it's kind of a good thing sometimes when it happens this way. But if you request a lesson, we give you a lesson on what you request, and we don't necessarily know exactly what you want. So use this as a takeaway of, if you want something like that, tomorrow would be a great time to ask for like a more specific lesson.
Yeah, I want to learn how to do like slick, like nested, like loops. Like, because there's that one thing in the pre-work where it's like the outer loop is turning and then the inner one is turning faster than the inner, and like you can rename shit as you like go through. That's what I'm.
Interesting. Okay. Yeah, that's fine. That sounds like what you want is working with nested data structures. And yeah, to be honest, I was not sure what you wanted out of the lesson, and I spoke with some of the other instructors, and this is what they thought kind of too. So it's not like, yeah, but like in the future, you could be like super specific. And even if you don't know exactly what you want, I've seen students be like, I'm not exactly sure what to ask for, but like, I need to figure out how to do this thing, and I'm struggling with this concept. Can you help me out with what I need to ask for? Like, you can do that in the morning. Cool.
I mean, to be honest though, it's not a total bust. Like, we've been working in Ruby, and this is like really good refresher, to be honest. So, like,
definitely. It's like, you'll also see this stuff when you're just looking shit up. But yeah, get to working. Just try doing some stuff to dick around, and I think you'll figure out some shit. Yeah. Sorry, go for it.
in that my array, for each element and index, is element and index a reserved word, or?
Nope. Those are the arguments that you're passing in. Watch, you could change element to something completely different, and it'll still work just fine and dandy.
Okay. So, but the second,
The order that you put them in matters, right? So the first one is always going to be the element that you're choosing, and the second one is always going to be the index of that element that you're choosing. That makes sense? Cool. And by the way, something you could try that I think might be better practice for you right now, if you're trying to figure out how .map, .reduce, all that shit works, something that might be really good practice would be, I don't know if you recognized it, but if you look inside of here, right? Give me a second. Can you see what I'm drawing?
Yeah.
Cool. If you look inside of here, what does this look like to you from this red line to that red line? What data type would you call that? If I were to look inside of here.
Oh, like an arrow? I don't know. Arrow function.
It's a function. It's an anonymous function. if you wanted to, you could try ripping out that anonymous function, and this is a really good practice, I think. Rip out that anonymous function and make it an explicit function. So make a function name called, like, I don't know, console.log or whatever. But the point is that that's how you actually could just type in for each and then console.log. Fun fact. So try this. This will just be fun nerdery. Try deleting everything inside of the for each real quick. Cool. Now just type in console.log.
It'll implicitly pass in.
Right. It will implicitly pass in each one. And that's kind of like the purpose of a callback function is, what do I run for each element? Oh, I run the callback function for each element. A really cool exercise would be try making a for each function. It doesn't have to be dot notation, but try making a function where you could type in for each and then pass in a callback function and an array and then do the same thing. That's something that'd be cool to try. You can also try, if you ask for, like, I think you would call them like applicatives, or ask for like enumerables, but in JavaScript. I would love to give a lesson on that. There's some cool shit there. A lot of cool shit there.
Yeah, we can shoot for that tomorrow.
I think that'd be a really good idea. I think that would be a better idea than these for loops. But what?
I was saying, like, I think the things that I've learned the most and like have helped me the most have been like tools like this kind of shit. Like how to kind of like get specific numbers and.
Your audio is like really bad. Like I could barely hear you.
Sibilants. Are we good?
Oh, you got all that there.
That bass.
No, I'm saying, like, I think this is the shit that has helped me out the most, because I feel like when I'm in situations where I need to like power through shit and figure it out, like I go back to like building janky ass loops. And so like
Janky ass loops are the best way to, well, I feel like a lot of times this is the best way to understand it, is with some like basic ass situation. We'll do map stuff tomorrow, map, filter, reduce. We can do all that tomorrow if you want to.
Cool. Yeah, probably like a big class on enumerables, like because like whenever I'm fucked with, like, can't figure something out, I have like a big list of like enumerables and their actions for Ruby, and so like I feel like that would really, really help.
Yep, I'm good at giving that one. I also think other instructors are probably really good at that too, but that's one of my favorite ones to teach. So, although I did enjoy teaching this one too, but yeah, I'm gonna hop into some other groups, but just keep dicking around with this. It is cool to see this shit in action, because to be honest, I didn't even know this existed until like after I graduated. I'm like, what the fuck? You can do that?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, that really tripped me out.
Yeah.
That's like the liberal arts way of writing code, I feel like.
All right.
So it was bad. Wait, John, one quick question. If I want to go write down all of the enumerables for JavaScript, what's the best documentation to do that?
I don't know. You should just
All right, sorry.
know the ones that you want to use. The biggest ones are map, filter, reduce, sort, find.
Cool.
Those are big ones. Also, you're going to run into errors right there because your commas are supposed to be semicolons inside of a for loop.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I just figured I'd stop you there preliminarily.
I appreciate it.
All right. I'm going to
Peace.
go ahead and find another breakout piece.
My array consists of.
What are y'all doing?
Oh, I don't think it'll actually let us do this because it's numbers in whatever. Well, what if I did this though?
So how's this going? How are y'all feeling about just?
Oh, I think we've been letting a little like red squiggly line throw us off for no reason. That's just there.
Why do you have a $sign curly brackets?
Oh, I was just, well, we were console logging my array a second ago, and then I was gonna console log like a string with some of that too.
Where does that $sign curly brackets work? Does it work? It only works in one spot. And what is that spot? In one situation.
In what were you gonna say? Backticks is what
Yep,
you're
it
saying?
has to be inside of backtick.
String interpolation.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, I might have missed that part. Well, that's what we were trying. Oh, well, why don't we go back to what we were doing before, actually, instead of this the console log stuff. So we were doing something like this. I'm gonna multiply everything times 5. And I think maybe. Do you see how this red squiggly line is just here, John?
Sometimes that's just REPL being REPL.
Okay, so I think we let that throw us off, and we thought we were doing something wrong.
No, REPL just sucks sometimes.
Gotcha.
That's 100% what happened.
Yeah, I think that's literally okay.
REPL is not the greatest way of.
Gotcha. So we didn't when we got to this point, we didn't even bother hitting run because we were just like, oh, there's an error. What's wrong? Okay. Oh, I should.
Do we need to console log it?
I think so. That didn't multiply them.
I think we console log num times 5.
What if we did return num times 5 and?
Oh yeah. What? Wait. What? I'm sorry. Yeah, I'm noticing that it logged it 5 times. Maybe outside of the out here.
What does for each return? What is dot each return in Ruby?
Why didn't it return? It's not multiplying them.
What is dot each return in Ruby?
What is that? I can't remember the. Oh my god.
Turns the original array.
So what do you think dot for each would return in JavaScript?
Oh well, I mean, well, so then
array.
what we're probably looking to do is something more like this then.
A dot map. Yep.
But we were trying to use a for each because that was an example.
No, I mean, this would be a perfect use case of when you would want to use a dot map.
Okay.
I would have loved to teach a lesson on dot map, dot filter, dot reduce. That's just not what the lesson was about.
So, well, wait a second. Is there a way to use a for each and still multiply all these numbers?
Sure, you just have to do it with a variable on the outside of it.
I see.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Cool. So yeah, your for loops are not you could think of these things that are like Ruby enumerables. You could think of them as a way of transforming the array. So when you do an array and then a transformed version of it, that's what most of these are for. So it's maybe I want a doubled array. That would be an array that I map over and double each number. Or maybe I want a reduced array. So maybe I want the sum of all of an arrays. It's a transformation of that array into something else. The only iterable that does not do that, the only dot map, dot reduce, dot filter, the only one that doesn't do that is for each. A for each does not transform it. All a for each does is it iterates over it just like a for loop. So all of these methods that we talked about, for, while, do while, all of them, all they do is give you a means of extracting each element, and then you could process it. Does that make sense? So right now, if you wanted to console.log num times 5, you would get the numbers that you want, but you also wouldn't really be creating anything. If you wanted to maybe create, let's say you wanted to create something, right? Let's say you wanted to create a doubled array. You would have to create a variable called your new array and then push into that new array the doubled one. Does that make sense? I get the hunch that Paige has it, right? Paige, you want to drive for a bit? Maybe you also let Paige drive.
No, I don't.
You also let Paige drive. I bet she could do it.
No, I was just trying to figure it out.
Okay. Well, it sounded like you were on the right track. But the goal is whenever you're doing if you're just doing a for loop, you usually have to create some variable, manipulate that variable, and then that variable still lives outside of that for loop. You create it, so like in between line 1 and 2, why don't you try this? Say let new array equals empty array. Now, as a side effect, in between 3 and 5, what you're going to do is you're going to say new array dot push num times 5. So now let's talk about what's happening. You have an empty array. Then, as you're going through, don't do a dot map, do a dot for each. Let's keep it in for loops. Not a dot map would be better, but I'm just saying if we want to practice these for loops, you could do the same algorithm for all your different for loops, right? But you're going to say new array dot push num times 5, and then what are you going to console.log? Is it going to be my array?
Oh shit, no, new array. My bad.
Nice. So that worked. Cool. So I'm really glad that you're getting this exposure to this problem though, because like it's really important to think about this stuff. Also, even if you did a dot map here, let's say you did a dot map here, are your applicatives, are they mutative or non-mutative?
Mutative.
They're not mutative.
I thought a map does mutate your
Nope.
What?
You wind up with a transformed version of it, but it doesn't mutate the original myArray. So you would have to say myArray equals myArray.map.
Okay, I got you.
None of the iterables mutate the original.
Huh. But, well, wait. In Ruby they do, don't they?
Nope.
No? Shit. Oh, okay, so no, that's more like the
implicit return.
Push is a mutate, pop is a mutate.
Pop is a mutate.
What's the other you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah, and this code does not look good right now because it's a map and then there's a push inside of it, and that doesn't really make sense.
Right.
So the map is whatever you return in your map is going to be like, if you did return, so if you said myArray equals myArray.map and then everything in there, and then you return num times 5, that would be what you want. I'll let y'all try and figure that out. That's fine if what you do over the next 6 minutes is figure out how to get that map working. I think that's actually a great challenge, even though it's not necessarily like what the class is about. That's fine. So I'm going to hop into another group.
Cool.
Got Junior and Rodney. Peace.
I hated that. Running into like just those loops that do not stop.
How we doing? How do y'all like, I'm curious, how do y'all like just me throwing y'all out and being like, do whatever the fuck you want?
I actually don't mind it. I like being able to go through it, mess around, try to like figure out if my thought process on it is what it is, and if it's not, then I got to figure out why it's not.
I love it. Great. Yeah, that's what I've noticed is that people are kind of like, they're not doing a lot really on what I told them to do, but that's fine because they're figuring out the shit that they don't know just by dicking around, and I think that's good. I don't know. I hope so at least. Oh, look, it looks like you did some of this stuff. Oh, wait, you copied my code. Nice.
Yeah, I put it in there for notes.
All right, so why don't y'all try, what have y'all done so far?
So we messed around with a for each. I feel like it makes sense when you say that the for each is kind of what you stick to, because it does do essentially what a map's going to do or a filter. I think if you just put in the right stuff you're looking for, your for each will get you pretty far.
I'm not saying, I should clarify that. I'm not saying use a for each instead of a map.
Okay.
I'm saying use a for each instead of a for. Or
okay, I got you.
Instead of
like
while. I'm not. I want to be very careful on the fact that I'm not saying do a for each instead of a map. That's a totally different concept.
Got you. Okay. So rather than doing these do whiles and for loops and all that, you're going to do a for each over that.
Right, for iterating through them. But that's assuming that I'm not transforming the array. Right? If I want to transform the array, most of the time I could find a different enumerable for that.
So a map is going to be a transforming function, right? Or it's going to be like
a map transforms each term. Y'all should request like JavaScript, I don't know, you call them JavaScript enumerables tomorrow. That would be a great thing to request, I would say.
Yeah, no, I completely agree.
And that's one of the best takeaways that I've gotten from talking to all these people. Cool. I'm actually going to hop into another group, and then I'm going to get out and just clarify that what you just said is not what I meant.
Gotcha.
Sweet.
All made sense to me until they got to like the check death like function, and it was like checking that where the axis that it's on or whatever just to figure out if he died or not. Hey.
Oh. About checking death?
There is an article about how to recreate the Google dinosaur game with like HTML, JavaScript, and CSS.
That's awesome.
So, yeah, I didn't actually do it, but I was like I was reading it and I was like following along until that point. I was like, this is fucking crazy.
How are y'all doing on this stuff? It looks like you're doing actually very well as far as like you've been practicing kind of dicking around with all this stuff. How do y'all feel about the format of me just being like, be free, go do what you want to do? Like, genuine question. I don't know if it feels good or not.
I liked it. I mean, for like on the fly, like if the time in the groups were shorter, it'd probably be a lot rougher. But I guess because of a lot of time we had, it was easy to come up with things pretty quickly.
All right, cool.
Yeah,
I was just
I liked it. This was fun.
Sweet. All right, I'm gonna actually end these breakout rooms because I have to clarify something. Apparently, when I said that I only use for each, people thought I meant I use for each instead of map or filter or reduce, and I did not. In fact, if anything, you should use for each as little as possible in comparison to those. We'll talk about that in a bit.
Awesome. Okay.
All right.
See you on the others. Or did everyone get confused because we were all taught not to?
I know one person did, so it's like something very much so worth clarifying because I might have actually given off the wrong message on accident.
Hey, John, we got a question.
Sure.
So when we was doing a for loop, we tried to decrement it, and anytime, like, so we did like let I equal 20, and while I is greater than 10 and decrement it or whatever, it would only bring us back to 12 versus 11. Why?
Did you say while I is, was the conditional I is greater than 11?
No, the conditional is I is greater than 10.
And were you subtracting by 1 or subtracting by 2 or 3 or something like that?
Subtracting by 1, just the minus.
I'd have to see your code. But before I take a look at your code, I need to clarify something because I think I misspoke on something before and I did not want to be misleading. But before, what I was saying is I tend to use dot for each instead of a for loop, or instead of a for in loop or a for of loop, or instead of a while loop. And I do mean what I said. What I did not mean, however, is that I use a for each instead of a dot map. I don't do that. I use a dot map whenever a dot map is appropriate. I use a reduce whenever a reduce is appropriate, and so on and so forth. and I think it would probably behoove everyone to go into an iterables lesson tomorrow. What's our schedule like today? Because I could possibly just see what does it look like for y'all. So I was from 1 to 2, and that was loops. Ahmed just did a node thing. Classes and objects with Damon. If y'all wanted to, I could go over some iterable stuff now.
Let's do it.
Do y'all feel ready for that? You feel good about that? I could do that. Cool. Awesome. Let me just check with the team real quick. And how about we take like a 5-minute break since we were there for an hour? So. I'm going to pause the recording and then we'll do 2 lessons in one. So I'll just stop recording.